This episode's made possible by Planful. Hello, on today's episode of Planning Aces, we'll be featuring the FP&A insights and commentary of three finance leaders, including CFO Kevin Rhodes of Extreme Networks, CFO Brendon Sullivan of 2X, and CFO Gabi Gantus of Mytra AI. This is Jack Sweeney, your co-host, along with performance management guru Brett Knowles, who will serve as our resident thought leader as we seek to highlight the takeaways from our distinguished group of planning aces. We begin after this. Ready to plan confidently, close faster, and report more accurately? Here's what sets Planful apart. Imagine purpose-built applications for every department, from FP&A to accounting, marketing to HR, all with built-in financial intelligence. It's easy to implement Planful in just weeks and with minimal IT involvement, so you can rapidly and seamlessly engage everyone across the business on your key financial progress. Best of all, Planful grows with you. Its unparalleled scalability ensures that no matter how fast your business expands, Planful can keep up. See why over 1,500 customers worldwide choose Planful as their flexible, user-friendly, end-to-end financial performance management platform. Go to planful.com/CFO Thought Leader to see how you can reach peak financial performance with Planful. Hi, it's Jack Sweeney, and I'm here with Brett Knowles, our performance management guru, colleague, and friend. Brett, it's almost as if we're experiencing some economic jitters or some rumblings. What do you make of it?
Well, and so we're our recording now.
Yes, that's correct.
So, my comment in that general area would be about the volatility of business right now. And every year we keep on thinking, gosh, it's getting more and more bizarre. And we're almost at the point now where you've got to set a new strategy every second day based on what's happening globally, what's happening as the U.S. finds its footing with your new president, which obviously has global implications. I'm going to Botswana next week, and they're talking all about the implication of Trump way over there. Like, it's the uncertainty that's out there doesn't mean we can stop doing business. We need to be able to do business with a different model of FP&A.
Meanwhile, I think unemployment rate has remained the same, but what we've seen is a hiring slowdown, or there have been various reports of a hiring slowdown, which I think we could well be connected to companies assessing the impact of AI on their manpower, what's needed, what's not.
Well, certainly that hiring people, sorry for cutting off, hiring people is one impact of AI. I think the other impact that I was hopefully alluding to was the fact that strategy is happening so quick, the changing in environments happening so quick, and it has huge implications. It's hard for little tiny human brains to think about. So let's say, for example, all of a sudden we find peace in the Ukraine. What does that mean to our businesses? And what does it mean if America gets the mineral rights out of Ukraine? What does that mean? And the implications are like these huge dominoes, which are phenomenal. And if you combine that, for example, with tariffs against bringing in aluminum and steel from Canada, what does that mean? And then what about the Middle East? What if suddenly we reconcile what's going on over there? And so the dilemma is there's so many things. It's crazy to think that in any organization, one brain can sort all this out. And the number of meetings you would need daily to process all these changes going on would stop you from doing any other work or just be prohibitive. And so AI, I'm not thinking about it in terms of headcount reduction. I'm just talking about it giving us the data we need to run this organization. Like, we can't run our organizations on what we used to have. And so it's this interesting occurrence of the right technology at the right time. Who knows whether AI is causing this uncertainty or is just helping us adapt to it. But it's just an interesting moment that we're at as leaders in our organizations.
Well, it's certainly a moment. And I have to say, I feel somewhat privileged to be out there asking finance leaders at this place in time about what's happening with their AI initiatives. What have you discovered? How are you measuring its impact? Do you think it's the right way? And Kevin Rhodes, CFO of Extreme Networks, certainly didn't disappoint us. He isn't just focused on AI's potential. He's questioning how companies monetize, measure, and manage it. Should AI be a profit center or a retention tool? Here's what Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple ways. I think about AI in two different ways, right? The AI is really going to be internally, how are we managing AI tools to make ourselves more productive? And then externally, how do we build AI within our own technologies that make our company, easier to do business with, and in fact that our customers can manage their networks with that AI in a better way. So from our perspective, I'll start with the external, right? So externally, we have a tool that's called Extreme AI Expert. And it's this conversational interface within our Extreme Platform One, which can securely and effectively combine the public data with the customer's private data. And that'll create this, kind of these proactive recommendations. And that helps the customers to find the information that they need to solve their problems, within their networking environment. It also cites the sources so that, human users can double check that information. That builds trust, et cetera. So that's what we're doing from an external perspective. From an internal perspective, because, the IT organization, has been really focused on developing AI internally, we found the two use cases that were best to go after was helping our salespeople with information that they can use in order to be better at selling, and also the resellers. So we sell through resellers, and we wanted to create AI tools for those resellers to be able to also, communicate with end customers and be able to sell better. So we focused on that first and foremost, and then we're moving down the line to, HR, functions or finance functions or other functions as well that we can find low-hanging fruit and make, ourselves more operationally efficient there. From an ROI perspective, people really need to think about, where's the low-hanging, is it embedded in your product? And if so, how are you going to monetize that? Are you just building technology that makes your product more sticky? Well, maybe there's a retention ROI there. Or is it, something that you're going to monetize separately and charge people for that AI? What I'm seeing early on is that people are going to develop within their product AI capabilities, but not charge for them, monetize them separately, but monetize it as part of the product and the product strategy, which is going to be a harder, ROI model for them, because now you're really looking at it as, does this AI that I develop help me with better stickiness factor? So I get a better retention of that customer. Is customer satisfaction going up? Customer satisfaction, the only way to measure that probably is also retention. And so that's probably the best way that we can imagine, companies looking at AI. On the internal side, AI can be measured more around, product, efficiency in general, right? So do we have fewer people we need to hire? Can we automate more processes and therefore we don't need to hire more people there? Is there a potential for AI to enable us to reshift, people's workloads to other areas where we can, automate, some of the functions that they have today? So there'll be other, I'll call it soft benefits there from AI as well, as we continue to move upstream and adopt more and get more powerful AI over time.
Well, many thanks to Kevin Rhodes, CFO of Extreme Networks, for joining us on episode 1075 a while back. Brett, what did you make of what Kevin shared?
I'm going to put a spotlight on a great distinction he made, and that is to think about AI for internal applications different than how you think about it for external applications. And I think all of us need to do that. And it gets tough because we get down one channel and we forget about the other. So I like that distinction. And on the internal side, I like the fact that he wasn't only looking at how can I lower my headcount? And that's an obvious opportunity because there are many, many tasks that are done that AI can offload. And yay, go ahead and do that. That's what I'm going to call low-hanging fruit. But things we can do to make our teams make better decisions. So his example of helping either inside or outside sales make better choices about which customers they spend time with, or even what options they provide to them, or how to better phrase the opportunity that certain functionality provides customers is super important. Those are the pixie dust, the black magic of what salespeople do, the ability to form that conversation. And if you can get AI to help you with that, it allows you to onboard salespeople faster and obviously shorten sales cycles and get better closing rates.
My sense from Kevin was how he had already invested some serious thought into the approaches and that sort of the framework to evaluate AI and his investments. Is there something that was provocative to you here?
Well, so the provocative part I would say is obviously look at headcount, get that off the table. That's not provocative. That's easy peasy. But talking about how we can make our people more effective in the processes that they currently have. Those are a couple of examples, and it extends from there as well. So AI can take a look at the video from that call and give you that standard insights of how many times did the customer indicate a willingness to buy, how many times did you make closing comment, all that kind of stuff that, again, consumes the sales manager time as they're trying to coach the salespeople. That's a whole bunch of stuff. Stuff that he didn't talk about, but is also prevalent, is how we can shorten process elapsed time. And the best example I can give is thinking of getting a passport. To get a passport takes about 2 weeks, but they're only spending about 20 minutes on that passport. The rest of the time is spent when that passport application is going from person 1 to person 2 and gets in there in basket and gradually makes it to the top, and then they work on it, goes to person 3 and so on. What if that time got evaporated? So even if I didn't make the passport person more effective, I just got rid of the wait time. Think about onboarding a new customer. So typically to onboard new customers, statistics say it takes about 2 weeks. That's 14 days of cash you're not getting. If I could compress that cycle into a day or two, I get an extra 10 days of cash. Now, what's the idle time? Well, when the salesperson gets someone on the hook, inside sales has to send out the documentation to get the credit form going. Once I get the credit form, it then has to go to credit for get reviewed. Once credit reviews it, credit has to get all the documentation, review it, approve it. Then it goes back. I get the contract signed. Then it goes back. There's all these steps in it that can get squeezed immediately out of that process without anyone working any faster. Just I don't have the idle time between when sales says go and the credit form gets sent out. When the credit form comes back, automatically AI is going to bring in all the appropriate information you can get from other vendors, other credit sources, Dun & Bradstreet, all that kind of stuff. And I get a complete file in front of the credit. Like all that stuff is internal process improvement AI can deliver tomorrow morning.
Interesting. You talked about employee effectiveness somewhat. I mean, when I think about these language models being pushed down to the individual level, the individual who does their job in their own sort of unique way, they likewise can discover ways of using the tool that are uniquely from their experience that others wouldn't be able to understand, but they can see the potential in. So the notion that there are hundreds and thousands of employees across a particular organization. Here they are experimenting with these tools, discovering new ways to use them and accelerate. It just seems to me like the sort of a creative bonanza
Right.
that if companies are able to blueprint some of these ideas and notions, it's going to all bubble up from the bottom
Right.
instead of being
Yeah.
handed down.
It accelerates the learning cycle. So, for example, let's say some rep makes some comment. When we were yakking before, we are talking about steel tariffs with Canada. Let's say a sales rep says something or the other about tariffs, Canada, whatever else, and the person at the other end reacts to it in a positive way. As a learning module, like the LMS, it's going to grab that and go, that is a positive thing to say, and it's going to feed it out to all the other salespeople so that if that part of the conversation comes up, there's now a clever interjection they can make. And that goes out instantly, not in tomorrow's update or tomorrow's stand-up meeting. It's instantly out there. 10 minutes later, the opportunity comes up to talk about tariffs. That scripting is right there. The rep can use it. So that to me is about the effectiveness that Kevin's talking about. And that's only looking internal. That's not looking at the customer facing. We can talk about that in a second. The internal stuff, there's huge opportunities that if you're not taking advantage of it, be careful because your competition is.
Well, the internal we've got covered. Now, what about this external that Kevin zeroed in on as well?
Yeah. Right. What I thought was interesting there is, and again, the question you posed was about ROI. Yeah. And he's saying, well, understand what you're looking for. Do you want to make something more sticky? In which case, I'm going to use AI one way. Or are you trying to identify new revenue streams for existing products? Then you're going to use AI in a different way in your products. So, what's interesting about that is in FP&A, we need to be guiding product development and sales on how we see AI externally. There's one extra dimension that's beginning to emerge. And what we're beginning to see in the marketplace is organizations are resistant to AI because their IT departments need to approve whatever the AI instrument is because they're concerned about data leakage and so on. What we're beginning to see is a couple of platforms are sanctioned. So, for example, I might have a new tool I want to bring into my organization. IT is going to say, no, we need to approve the AI unless it's Microsoft's Copilot. If it uses Microsoft's Copilot as the AI agent, you can bring it in right away.
Yeah.
What does that mean for companies like Kevin? When I decide I want to use my AI to make it sticky or to enter new markets, I also need to think about what AI instrument I'm using to shorten the sales cycle. If I go and build my own, yay, but I've got this huge approval cycle at the other end. Maybe you need to use one that's less sophisticated or less adaptive to your industry, but gets approved faster. Therefore, you get the foot in the door. So, and of course, once you got your foot in the door with AI, it's a land and expand model. So it's interesting that he's differentiated internal, external. External, there's some features in it that FP&A we need to be coaching our internal customers about to make sure they're making the right decisions.
Yes. And everything you just reflected on, it really just reveals how the CFO role, it's so involved here, it's so intricate here to some of these decisions, more than any other sort of technology wave or paradigm before. CFOs are so connected to this one.
What I would add on to what you just said, and that is, part of this conversation is what is the evolving role of FP&A or CFOs? And I think we have to see, part of the trick is to see beyond the silo. The example that we just used with Kevin is sales is only going to look at sales and not think of the product development aspect of, do I choose Copilot or something else? And the CFO has to look at the total value stream. What is time, to order to cash, and how do I optimize that? And I'm going to see past the silos. And so in this crazy Oklahoma land grab that we have right now of AI, we need a broader perspective. And that ROI question, whether it's internal or external, we need to drive that from the CFO's office. Again, the organizations that we now need to model in FP&A are getting increasingly more complex. That's what our entire conversation today and previous podcasts has been about. And we can't possibly keep up with it with our little tiny human brains. Like we need the 7x24 monitoring that AI gives us to at least identify the triggers that mean we need to meet and talk about these things. Because otherwise they'll go unseen and we'll end up with problems down the road. If I'm competing with Kevin and he's decided to incorporate Microsoft's Copilot, therefore he's got a shorter sales cycle, if I'm a competition, I need to make sure that I'm seeing that for some reason, these deals are closing faster and faster than they were before, and we're not winning them. I don't know why. I don't know what it is Kevin's done. I know the system's changed. What's the likelihood that that's a metric that your organization's going to be looking at in the old FP&A world? You might not see it for a month or two or a quarter or two, and by then, the gap is too big. So I think AI is absolutely necessary in FP&A, and if we're not using it, you know your competition is. You know you're now moving slower than the other guy.
Well, we're going to change gears a little bit, but as we know, with our conversations, they all lead back to AI. But for now, our next planning ace is Brendon Sullivan of private equity brings big expectations. Well, what if growth stall? CFO Brendon Sullivan discovered that traditional reporting cycles left leadership reacting too late, leading Brendon to take inspired action. Here's what he shared with us.
I mentioned a couple times we're PE backed. We did that in March of 2023, and so coming out of that PE investment process was interesting. We had a very intense process. There's 6 months of content preparation and introduction calls and management meetings and due diligence and negotiations. And as we're coming down the stretch with our selected PE firm, we're starting to look to the future and thinking like, man, there's going to be a press release that goes out that says like, we're PE back now. And our PE firm has this treasure chest of relationships that they're going to open up for us. And we need to be ready to capitalize on that. And so we amped up our recruiting and our hiring engines to make sure we had enough supply to fill all the demand that we expected. Our biggest fear was telling our new PE partners, like, thanks for the introduction, but like, we don't have enough people to service them. Sorry. That was not a great way that we thought, to start our relationship. What happened in reality was we were so entrenched in that investment process for 6 months that the executive team collectively took their eye off the business, myself included. Our pipeline had not been properly tended to. Our churn was creeping up. We had some holes that we hadn't paid attention to. And the benefits that we expected to receive from our new partnership, they weren't instantaneous. Like they needed to be planted and grow. And so, what effectively happened was we ramped up all of our supply. And then our revenue stalled out, coming out of that process, which created an issue of our gross margin percentage just leaking month after month until we got a proper lashing from our our new PE board, which it was a tough conversation, but one that was needed. And the realization that I had coming out of that was monthly reporting was too infrequent for our dynamic business. If you think about the seed of a problem sprouting, if you're waiting until a month-end close and then maybe reporting happening a couple of weeks later, you're lucky if you spot your problem in that first set of reporting, right? And so maybe you don't spot it, and in reality, it doesn't get attention in that first review. Now you're another 4 to 6 weeks out before you're looking at it again. And so we were in a position where we were acting on problems that started 8 to 10 weeks before, and are going to take some time to solve after that. And so 8 to 10 weeks is 20% of the year gone by. And by the time you're solving it, maybe it's 25 or 50% of the year gone by before you're solving problems. And so what that inspired me to do was put in a weekly reporting cadence to our board and our leadership team with both lagging and leading metrics, with the thought that if we have an opportunity to course correct 12 times or 52 times, that the more frequent assessment is going to create more action within our executive team and our board. And so it's been a game changer in our business. It took some time to get the data structured properly and the tools in place so that it's a 15-minute report. It's not taking an entire day to do weekly reporting, because I didn't want to put that on myself and my team that, hey, an entire day is dedicated to just building reports. Like that's not the best use of our time. And so putting the right structure in place so that we could do it in 15 minutes was key. But now each week we have a view of our monthly P&L projections and our margin projections and bookings and pipeline volumes, sales rep performance, all the key deals that are in front of us. any new opportunities that have been created in the past week, and any movements in our net revenue retention. And so, yeah, when we see metrics start to trend in the wrong direction, we're much quicker to take action. And when we see metrics trending above plan, we can feed that fire really fast. And so we don't really have surprises anymore. The data's flashed to our board and executive team every week. And what I found and what's been incredibly helpful is no surprises is a key tenet to a successful board relationship. My North Star metric is monthly MRR growth. So our recurring revenue growth. Our model mainly runs on MRR, and so we deploy teams of people and get a subscription charge for that on a monthly basis. And so that's what I'm looking at every day. I know off the top of my head that 3.4% monthly growth compounds to 50% on the year, and so that's sort of like the minimum number that we're looking for is 50% growth year on year. And so every month I'm looking towards how are we tracking towards hitting that 3.4% monthly growth. And then there's a bunch of different layers that come underneath that. And so when you think about monthly recurring revenue growth, there's new logos that come into the equation. There's expanding existing customers. There's existing customer churn, and the net of the expansion of the churn being your net revenue retention. And so there's different layers and different ways that you can skin the cat, depending on seasonality or volume of the business. That sometimes some of those are both bigger in each direction, and sometimes they're a little lighter. But overall, that North Star metric tells me whether we're heading on the way to hitting our goals for the year or not.
Well, thank you again to CFO Brendon Sullivan of Unpack Marketing Services Company. Brendon joined us on episode 1079. And what did you make of what Brendon shared?
The first thing I made of it is you must be an incredible interviewer. For someone to go and say, I took my eye off the ball, I missed something completely, my bad, and these are the consequences. Never in my entire life would I admit that. So I don't know what you had on.
Every 1,000 episodes
that was
it happens,
awesome.
yes.
So beyond the amazement that he said that, it reflects on the conversation we just had about Kevin with AI. What would it have been like had Brendon had AI? If Brendon wasn't having to look at it himself, it wasn't his eyes that got taken off the ball. What if AI was looking at it 7x24 and those same trigger events were noticed? AI would send him a note saying, hey, pay attention. You have this, ARR issue going on. And therefore pay attention to this thing. Now, he could still choose to ignore it because at a certain point, I need the human brain. His point was, I didn't even see it. I didn't see it till it was too late.
Going back to what you suggested about, I think, just the volatile environment right now for the economy and other parts of the world as well, there is this technology that might be able to help companies and organizations read the tea leaves better than anyone would have imagined in terms of how to respond to this volatility.
Oh, yeah, but I'm going to go one step beyond that. I'm going to go, if you've got a 14-year-old kid, they could write this up for you in AI better than anyone in your team. Part of the problems that we have as a leadership team is we think our wisdom is all that we need and we can just use our years and years of experience. But here's a case where it's immediately on the shelf and available, whatever that trigger event is. So think of this as the old-fashioned dashboard of your car. You had an oil gauge, you had a tire, you had a pressure gauge, you had a voltage gauge, you had all sorts of stuff. Now I just have the check engine light. I don't need to be watching a dozen dials anymore as a leader. AI can be watching all of them and trigger on that check engine light for you. And it's not difficult to do. You just need to say, what are my 10 KPIs I need to watch? What's the performance threshold? At what point do I want that KPI to trigger on the check engine light? Again, your 14-year-old could write up that prompt in a minute. So again, I'm using guilt here. If you're not doing this, you're daft. You're absolutely missing the boat and other people are going to be grabbing your business. But then he goes on to go, the other problem we had is we weren't meeting frequently enough. You're saying we should actually have a weekly report. Just a 15-minute thing. That doesn't take a lot of time to prepare. Well, guess what? AI can put it together for you. And why would it be once a week? If you're driving along, do you want your gas gauge update once a week? Not a chance. Now, as you know, that funny accent, I'm Canadian, eh? And I'm with great humor looking at the tariffs, which today are on, tomorrow they're off, the next day they're on, the next day they're off. That's like your check engine light triggering on and off all the time. Now you got to decide what you're going to do about it. Do I worry about this long term, or is it going to flicker on and off and I just worry till it settles down? Like, the issue is waiting a week is even too long.
Or you should go ahead and buy yourself a Tesla, or maybe not since you're Canadian, or even if you were American, maybe not. But we'll stay clear of politics. Our next planning ace, however, spent 12 and a half years inside Tesla's FP&A ranks. And we could not resist featuring her here as a planning ace. It's just a great inside look at Tesla's operations and its finance mindset. This planning ace is Gabi Gantus, who is today CFO of Mytra AI.
Tesla was organized into 5 groups that made up the FP&A. It was actually called FP&A Business Operations Team. So there was corporate FP&A. This is, I think, what most people think of as the traditional FP&A. They maintained the corporate model, took inputs from everyone else, and rolled up the 3 statements. They worked what I would say like more internal to finance, right? They faced into finance people. And then the rest of the org was actually split into 4 areas, more matching the business. So I covered manufacturing supply chain. There was another team that covered engineering. They owned the bill of material, early product design. That team also then started working on Dojo, AI, data computers, all of that fun stuff, sales, marketing, and service, and then energy. And then energy was a little unique because it more was focused on the revenue side. The engineering and the manufacturing side covered the costs. So it's not traditional in the sense that very little time was spent just like dealing with a spreadsheet. And it was really more partnering with business partners to help them make better decisions, well-informed decisions with finance as a partner. We always like to view ourselves as a partner. And this is still my goal at Mytra. No one should ever feel upset when finance walks in the room or try to hide things. Finance should always be a supporter of their business partners. I always used to joke that I will push on you harder in the background than anyone else, so that when I go and have to make an argument to the CFO why they should allow this spend, I can say, I've already pushed on this. We should approve this. And that's kind of always the good balance to have. Yeah, I think one of the biggest insights that I picked up in my career is, and I kind of touched on this a little bit already, is staying close with the business. I've so many examples of where finance didn't play a traditional finance role. I would say probably one of the most bizarre roles that I played at Tesla, and you could ask many people, I did it till I left, that I became the owner of. I owned the company's long-term manufacturing roadmap. That was not finance by any means. It kind of fell into my lap at some point because ultimately when you look at a factory and a manufacturing facility, the longest lead time if you're building a new product often is, where are you going to build it? Do you need to buy a factory? Do you need to build a factory? Get the equipment? And so as part of my job, to do the long-term planning for finance for the manufacturing side, I needed to know what we were building when. And I started consolidating all this information, working with many groups, engineering, programs, operations, and building out a roadmap. And I became the maintainer of said roadmap for Tesla. Not traditional finance, but in some ways became, it was very natural, because to do a good job with a financial forecast, ultimately that was the job of the finance team, have a great financial forecast that the company can use to make decisions off of. You need to know what's coming and make sure everyone is working towards the same goal. It's a lesson that I learned that good decision making helps the financials. So it might not seem like, wow, why is finance doing that? How does that help finance? But for me, having a good roadmap helped me do my job better as finance, and then bringing other people along, making sure everybody was working towards the same roadmap, poking holes in it, questioning it together, made the company do a better job of how we were thinking about long-term planning.
Well, we were pleased to have Gabi Gantus of Mytra AI, again, CFO of Mytra AI, join us a while back on episode 1076. Mytra AI is a warehouse automation, AI-driven automation. She joined a number of her former Tesla colleagues just earlier this year when she stepped in as CFO there. But Brett, what did you make of what Gabi shared?
Well, I liked what she had to say. On the surface, the observation that the organization chart ain't what it used to be. We used to be able to clearly define who was in finance, who was in sales, who was in operations. But it's really a big Venn diagram these days. And that overlap between finance and, in this example, operations isn't as clear as it used to be. And the decision about who, think of the RACI model, responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. Who the A is, who's accountable for it, isn't as clear as it used to be. So the example she uses is the manufacturing roadmap. In her case, she was the A. She was accountable for it, even though she was in finance. And it's equally possible there might be things that you would have thought were in finance that, in fact, maybe HR was the A or operations was the A. So I think thing one of that learning is ignoring everything else. We'll talk about AI in a minute. Ignoring everything else, the organization chart isn't what it used to be. And it's important that you consider who owns what, not based on the organization chart, but who has the competency and the information in a timely manner to make that decision. And the equation basically is who's the authority at the point of variance and control. The authority control at the point of variance. Drive-through window. So at the drive-through window, let's say they give you the wrong coffee. That's a point of variance. Now, let's say you go, hey, you gave me the wrong coffee. I want it with, whatever else, oat milk or something. If that person doesn't have the authority to fix the problem, now I got a bottleneck. So I'm going to sit there in the drive-through until it gets solved. So I need to make sure that person has the authority. Now, maybe it's the authority, but not the control. They don't have access to the oat milk or whatever else you need. Again, I'm stuck. So I need to get the point of variance, point of control, point of authority as close together as possible. And in her case, she's saying for the manufacturing roadmap, that happens to be finance. That is the criteria to use, not the old-fashioned organization chart.
Again, she didn't share an awful lot on AI, but what is the thread maybe that you see with our
Well, the thread is, what if no
here?
one owned the manufacturing roadmap? What if we all owned it? So this is something that isn't finance, it's not operations, it's not logistics, it's not procurement, it's everyone. So what if this was owned by, what's the guy in 2001 Space Odyssey? Hal. Let's say it's owned by Hal. And each of us have different trigger points. So maybe Gabi's trigger point is if spend goes more than 10%, or cash flow gets extended more than X percent. Operations, on the other hand, is what if I have so many ECNs, engineering change notices, that it delays things? Or I have an issue with the supplier in China. What if procurement? So they each have different trigger points where the check engine light should go on and they pay attention. So this isn't owned by any one department, it's owned by the organization, and each of them have trigger points that AI is going to put in front of them as soon as it happens. And then AI can decide if that trigger point is great enough that we need different people in the room, and maybe decide who needs to be in the room. So let's say I have a problem with that supplier in China. I need someone from procurement, someone from logistics, someone from operations. And what if AI called that meeting? What if Gabi did not have to call a meeting? AI is clever enough to know who needs to be involved in that meeting and goes ahead and calls it. Wouldn't that be interesting? What do you think? Did I describe to you something that your 14-year-old couldn't program up for this evening? Everyone sets up their trigger point. When does the check engine light go on for me? The nexus or the linkage between departments and processes, objectives, and key results is all there. This is not even AI. This is just ML. This is machine learning frameworks that you build up as you build your strategy. What are the assumptions I make when I set my strategy? Document those and make sure that your machine learning is including those as it unfolds.
So help us understand what is the reset here that's happening for finance leaders. Most of them, I would wager, feel like they're already falling behind.
Well, that would be good. No. I mean, step one is to feel the need to improve, and I would imagine that all those CFOs who are not listening to your podcast are sitting there happily like the dinosaurs waiting for the meteorite to hit the world. Bad things are going to happen. And that meteorite, there's nothing you're going to do that's going to change it. Like, you better figure out what's AI ain't going away. And the repeated conversation we have is this stuff is not as complicated as it was even 6 months ago. It literally is a work of a 14-year-old. In fact, the advantage of a 14-year-old is they're not encumbered by the perception of knowledge. They don't think they know what's going on. If you describe the story I just did about Gabi to any 14-year-old, they would figure out how to write a prompt for it.
We deal with obviously a lot of technology CFOs who are perhaps more aware, have been having the conversations they should be having, whereas in other industries, they're perhaps not having those conversations, and they are on the front lines trying to provoke the conversation into parts of the organization that need to be adopting these tools and getting their people familiar with them.
It'd be out of character for me to take a contrarian position, but if I were to, I would say, from what we observe in our client base, the slice is not tech versus non-tech. We see as many tech companies ignoring AI as we see manufacturing companies ignoring AI, as many service companies ignoring AI. It's more about the CFOs. If you think of Jeffrey Moore crossing the chasm, are you an early adopter? Are you willing to take the leap? The dilemma is it's no longer early adopters. It's now moving towards a mass majority. But there's still people in the mass majority that aren't willing to take the leap. And so that's the dividing line. It's not what industry you're in.
Well, I suspect the planning aces that we featured on this episode would be counted among the early adopters. And if not, certainly that part of the mass majority that is now leaning into the AI technologies. Brett Knowles, once more, thank you for joining us, allowing us to share our planning aces with you and have you share your thoughts, of course.
Okay, my friend. Chat with you later.